Good morning, Nigeria, and welcome to Daybreak on Trust Television. It's a beautiful Thursday morning here in the Federal Capital Territory, largely so because, as so many people would say, the temperature of the country has dropped with the availability
of cash, exactly.
of cash, whether old or new. That's not important.
It doesn't really matter.
As long as it can buy you whatever you want. And we're happy to see happy faces around the country once again. I am Sunday Michael Ogo. It's a pleasure to have you join us this morning.
Yes, hello, good morning and welcome. I am Ibrahim Yusuf.
And moving on to news highlights this morning. I was pressurized. Some politicians plotting to halt Tinubu's inauguration. This is coming from the DSS.
I was pressurized to manipulate Abia Guba polls in INEC returning officer.
And U.S. increases fee for non-immigrant visa application.
And now to the details. The Department of State Services says some key political players are plotting to foist an interim government in Nigeria. In a statement on Wednesday, Dr. Peter Afunaya, DSS spokesman, stated that some persons have weighed various options, which include foisting an interim government after obtaining frivolous court injunctions to forestall the inauguration of new executive administration and legislative houses at the federal and state levels. Afunaya said such persons were also considering sponsoring endless violent mass protests in major cities to warrant a declaration of a state of emergency. The DSS says it supports a hitch-free handover and vowed to work assiduously in this direction. President-elect Bola Tinubu is due for inauguration on May 29th.
Professor Nenna Oti, returning officer for the Abia State governorship election, has confessed that she was offered a bribe to manipulate the elections. Exactly a week ago, Alex Oti of the Labour Party was declared winner of the governorship polls. Speaking while being welcomed by the staff and students of the Federal University of Technology, Owerri, Oti, who is the Vice Chancellor, said before the final declaration of the result, she was promised huge monetary inducement to change the will of the Abia people. She stated that she stood on her ideals and principles not to shortchange anyone and ensured that the will of the people of Abia prevailed and that their votes counted during the elections. INEC had suspended collation of the election result after talks overran one of its offices in Abia. The returning officer and some key electoral officials were summoned to Abuja over the controversy. Abia is the only state where the Labour Party won in the governorship elections.
And the United States has announced an increase in certain non-immigrant visa application processing fees. The increases, published in the Federal Register on March 28th, will be effective from May 30th, 2023. It said that the fees are set based on the actual cost of providing services and are determined after conducting a study of the cost of such services, adding that an activity-based costing methodology was used to calculate annually the cost of providing consular services, including visa services. The fees for most non-petition-based NIVs were last updated in 2012, and certain other fees were last updated in 2014. The U.S. said other consular fees are not affected by this rule, including the waiver of the 2-year residency required fee for certain exchange visitors.
And that's it on our highlight this morning. Moving on to our packages, President Muhammadu Buhari has sworn in Solomon Arese as the new chairman of the Police Service Commission. The swearing in of the former Inspector General of Police preceded the meeting of the Federal Executive Council on Wednesday. It comes 2 months after the Senate confirmed him as the chairperson of the PSC. Kainde Amadu brings us the report.
President Buhari had forwarded Arase's name to the Senate for confirmation in line with sections 153 subsection 1 and 154 subsection 1 of the 1999 Constitution as amended. It is not surprising that the former police chief got the nod of the Senate. Arase, 65, who retired in 2016, was the 18th indigenous Inspector General of Police from April 2015 to June 2016. He has an uphill task ahead of him, but the first big assignment is to smoothen relations between the Commission and the police top hierarchy.
If you look at the caliber of people you have in the Commission, then you also look at the professional skills of the police management team. There is no way that there will be no occasionally these issues, but What I think we should do, each of the parties should not learn to take everything. There must be negotiation, there must be empathy, there must be respect, for each of our spaces. I will expect that the Commission will allow the Inspector General of Police to exercise its operational control over the Nigerian police force, and that the IG himself will respect, the constitutional powers, the police force.
The former IGP is also looking at tackling corruption in the police force from the source.
As an Inspector General of Police, the way I looked at issue of corruption was to identify it from the source. When you tackle issues that are likely to affect, the tendencies to be corrupt, you deal with the issues. Welfare. How are you taking care of their welfare? How are you ensuring that when they retire, they have a decent house to go to? How do you take care of their children? Can we organize scholarship scheme for their children? Can we ensure that when we deploy them, they have, the necessary equipments, to work with? There must be empathy.
There's also the niggling problem of indiscipline, which has not only affected the image of the police, but its relationship with society.
I would not want a situation where civil transactions are criminalized. So any officer who, steps out of the line, there are going to be consequences. But at the same time, they are my colleagues and children. So I'm going to make sure that I sharpen their skills. I made them to start having self-confidence in themselves. With more training, the trust gap between members of the public and the police, will be breached.
The new chairman of the Police Service Commission must take a leaf from his predecessors if he is to successfully maneuver through the many pitfalls of his new office. From State House, Abuja, Kehinde Amodu, Trust TV News.
The Nigerian Meteorological Agency predicts the possibility of thermal discomfort across some cities in the country during the holy month of Ramadan. NIMET listed Gombe amongst the states at risk of experiencing high thermal discomfort. And despite the hot weather condition, commercial motorcycle riders who are fasting in the holy month spend hours operating across the city to put food on the table. Ibrahim Ismail reports.
This is a typical workday for commercial riders at the popular New Mile 3 joint, Gombe Metropolis. Temperatures here is 37 centigrade. These Okada operators defy the scorching sun to navigate the city and get money to feed their families during iftar and sahur this Ramadan. I have a wife and a son. I can't be idle. I must struggle. I work the whole hours of the day up to 2 a.m. For me, the heat is not too much. It is normal.
To
be honest, the heat has reduced these days. It has been cloudy and there is little breeze. Meanwhile, some of the Okada riders are strategic in their operations during the fasting period, taking few hours break to have some relief from the scorching sun. We resume 6 a.m. in the morning, take a break by 12 noon, and resume after Zuhr prayers. While others resume after 4 p.m. and close during iftar. While Okada riders struggle in the harsh weather, tricycle operators say they feel a little better in the tricycle shed. Our work condition is better than that of those operating a motorcycle because the tricycle has a shed. For Nigerians who are fasting in the holy month to mitigate the impact of this harsh weather condition, medical experts and Nigeria Meteorological Agency advise people to drink a lot of water after breaking of the fast. Ibrahim Ismail, Trust TV News, Gombe.
Moving on, the Independent National Electoral Commission has presented certificate of return to Kano State Governor-elect Abba Kabir Yusuf alongside members-elect of the State House of Assembly. The NNPP candidate pulled over 1 million votes to defeat the APC candidate Nasru Yusuf Gawuna, who garnered over 890,000 votes. Receiving the certificate, the governor-elect calls on his co-contestants to join hands with him to rebuild the state, saying his wife and family members would have no role in government. Trust TV correspondent Idris Jibril brings us the report.
That was the INEC resident electoral commissioner in Kano issuing certificate of return to Abba Kabir Yusuf of the New Nigeria People's Party, who was recently declared the winner of March 11 governorship election in Kano. According to the governor-elect, the most important aspect of his victory at the moment is the development of Kano State by carrying everyone along, irrespective of their political loyalty.
The election period is over. It's now time for all of us to join hands together with a view to offering lasting solutions to a myriad of problems benefiting our dear state. For us in the NNPP, it is a no victory, no conflict.
While commending the Independent National Electoral Commission for ensuring free and fair election, the elected governor assured that his incoming administration intends to ensure meaningful development of Kano State across all sectors.
And we must work together to ensure that Kano regains its right to consolidation in education, healthcare, agriculture, commerce, and industrialization, water supply, security, and the environment.
Meanwhile, 40 members of the State Assembly have equally received their certificate of return, after which they promise to continue to ensure adequate representation of their people.
You see, thank God, during the campaign we have realized there are new challenges, more especially in terms of youth consciousness and self-employment. So, inshallah, we are going to do our best to make sure our youth are empowered, our people are truly and adequately represented.
Hundreds of party supporters stormed the INEC headquarters to witness the ceremony. Idris Jibril, Trust TV News, Kano.
Meanwhile, Benue State Governor-elect Reverend Father Hyacinth Alia and members-elect of the State House of Assembly on Wednesday received their certificates of return from the Independent National Electoral Commission. At a ceremony in Makurdi, the governor-elect reiterated his commitment to make Benue State a better place for the citizens. Jimmy Azande reports.
Governor-elect Reverend Father Hyacinth Alia, his deputy Sam Ode, alongside 32 members-elect for the Benue State House of Assembly and their supporters were all elected for the opportunity to serve the Benue people. The party also promised to play oversight roles in line with the manifesto of the All Progressives Congress, APC.
We are not taking this for granted. First of all, need to get the ruling table, the drawing table to make our civil service work. Civil service is the engine of society, and things it's stable. It has to be very functional before we move to every other thing. So that's going to be the number one thing on the desk.
Looked into the party's manifesto and developed that of his. And he has put before you on the front banner the issue of civil service as his number one priority to make the state work again, considering the fact that Benue is a civil service state. So the party will give him all necessary support.
The elected officers in the 2023 general elections took turns to receive the certificates presented by the resident electoral commissioner, the National Commissioner overseeing Benue State at the commission.
Section 72, subsection 1 of the Electoral Act makes it mandatory that the Independent National Electoral Commission shall issue a sealed certificate of return to every person who has been elected as a governor, deputy governor, and as a member to the State Assembly. And the law obligates us issue this particular certificate within a period of 14 days after they are having been declared duly elected by the various returning officers. So on that note, I want to say once more that you are welcome. Why you are on my seat? God bless you all.
The assembly members-elect, on their part, pledged their commitment to the upliftment of their constituents, especially the youth population.
I believe it's a burden that will lay on me. I feel that we are supposed to carry every youth along as far as policy making is concerned, because a whole lot of the policies that have been made by the previous government have no room nor space for the youth.
Meanwhile, Governor Samuel Otom has already set in place a team to ensure a smooth transition come May 29, 2023.
The National Drug Law Enforcement Agency has arrested a housewife, Rabi Musa, and the husband to her younger sister in possession of 4 kilograms of cannabis sativa in Katsina. The commandant of the agency in the state, Mohammed Bashir, said this while briefing journalists on their statewide anti-drug war within the last 3 months. Abdullah Yemadi has details of the report.
God knows I was conscripted into this issue, because when they brought the cannabis sativa, I resisted, but later I joined them in selling it to get commission out of the proceeds. Now I realize my mistakes, and I promise never to indulge in anything like this again.
Worried about women involvement in drugs-related offenses, the NDLEA boss in Katsina advised parents to carefully scrutinize anyone seeking the hands of their daughters in marriages.
As we speak now, both Rabi Musa and Suleiman are facing prosecution. The case has already been filed to charge to court. Apparently, they will be arraigned any moment from now. Our take here is parents should be aware of the kind of husbands or in-laws, prospective in-laws that they give their daughters to.
The command has also arrested 3 suspects in connection with a stolen vehicle intercepted in Katsina Metro Police.
Further investigation actually reveals some documents we found inside the vehicle revealed actually the owner of the vehicle. So we actually tried to get in touch with them, and we found that the case has already been reported to the police in Jos, and they're actually working on it. So we are running out our own preliminary investigation now. By end of today, probably tomorrow, we'll be able to, with the case file and our investigation, be able to hand over to the police.
The suspects, identified as Nasiru Shehu, Awal Abdullahi and Felix Ajayi, confessed to have stolen the vehicle from Jos in Plateau State, heading to the neighboring Niger Republic. Both of us here are mechanic, panel beater, and an electrician. We conspired to steal this vehicle only to get what to eat, in addition to devil's influence. This is the first and the last time, I promise. The command had intercepted another stolen vehicle along Katsina Molumfashi Road 2 months ago and found some ammunition in the process. While the suspects were handed over to the police for further investigation and prosecution, NDLEA urges parents to take full responsibility of their children to avoid falling victims of drug dealers. Abdullahi Ismail Ahmadi, Trust Television News, Katsina.
Well, and that's it for the news headlines and, of course, reports on the hour. We'll take a short break right now, and when we return, Daybreak continues. To stay with us.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us on Trust TV's Daybreak. Right now it's time for us to take a look at the front pages of the papers and see what's making of the news. We'll start with Daily Trust newspaper, and headline reads, Governors-elect pledge better deals, receive certificates of return. And riders here that says, my family won't have role in governance. That's according to Abba Gida Gida. It's a new dawn in Benue, Reverend Father Alia. I'll remain fair, transparent, according to the National State Governor, and our expectations, according to residents. I'll be governor for all, that is according to Rivers State's Fabura, and let's do it together, Buni urges opposition. Now, all these details can be found on page 4 of the Daily Trust newspaper. Looking at those stories now, we've identified politicians plotting interim government, that is according to the DSS, that's on page 5. And Pope Francis, 86, in hospital with respiratory infection. That is on page 3. How Zenith Bank grew income to 540 billion naira in 2022 is also another story on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper. Now, these are the major stories making the front page of Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
All right, we move to the Leadership newspaper this morning, with the major headline, interim government plots, security experts, politicians warn against a repeat of June 12 crisis. With the riders there asked DSS to arrest those behind plans. Nigerians must resist plots, says Bulama Bukati. They are enemies of Nigeria, Senator Adeyeye. We will not accept any undemocratic government. PDP CSO's idea, senseless, Shehu Sani. And you'll find pictures there of coming in from various states where governors-elect showed up at the INEC premises to pick up their certificate of return. And of course, the National State Governor taking advantage of his proximity to the FCT to come present his certificate to the president. Well, beyond the ceremony, I'm not sure what that exactly signifies. And to other stories, Fenifere in disarray as Fansorati counter suspension of 2 officials. To other stories, CBN goes tough as small banks rush for holding companies. PDP will be stronger without IU, Wike. And FG OK's 24.2 billion free internet for 20 airports, varsities, and market. And Senate moves to recover 16 trillion unpaid ground rent. Police Commission promotes Mba 23 others as AIGs and 33 CPs. Audit defaulters to get 5-year jail term as National Assembly passes bills. These are the major stories on the front page of Leadership newspaper.
Next, we'll take a look at the Daily Independent, the major story on the front page. We've identified key players in plot for interim government, that is according to the DSS. Other stories here, 2023 census, MPC won't canvass question on religious affiliation. I'm not scared of EFCC after leaving office, that is according to Wike, and he questions how IU spent 12 billion naira realized from congresses. Details of that can be found on page 7. Still looking at the Daily Independent, Tinubu at his 71st birthday assures of rebuilding Nigeria. And FGOK's 59.7 billion naira for rivers oil producing communities. And insurance industry gathers 726.2 billion naira premium in Q4 2022. Those details can be found on page 6. Still on the front page of the Daily Independent, condemnation trails planned construction of second airport in Edo. Benin Airport records 907,000 passenger movement in 2 years. An additional airport misplaced priority, bad economics according to analysts. Moving towards the top of the front page there, the very middle, real reason Ihedioha quit PDP, Guba race revealed. That is on page 7. At the very top of the front page there, Arase promises to tackle tendencies that make policemen corrupt, assumes duty as substantive PSC chairman. And lastly, on the front page of the Daily Independent, I was pressurized to manipulate Abia Guba poll, as according to the INEC returning officer.
Moving on to the blueprint this morning, still staying with the DSS story, key political actors plotting interim government. Once any attempt to thwart democracy will be crushed. Cautions judiciary, media, CSO unyielding to plot, and the chance to build Nigeria, my greatest birthday gift, President-elect. Buhari APC governors upbeat, confident on Tinubu's capacity. And two other stories, we have pictures there of the various individuals that were sworn into various offices by the president on the floor of the council chamber. Ahead of the weekly Federal Executive Council meeting yesterday. Native demands 15 trillion damages, seek court order for FCT state status. And by Elsa Guba, stick to Electoral Act, group tells APC National Working Committee. Police rescues 10 kidnapped civilians and 3 cops in Kogi. And petrol to sell at 400 per litre after subsidy removal. That's coming from Pengerson. Buhari swears in ex-IGP Arasi as PSC chair. Boko Haram bomb maker dies, stepping on self-made IED. Talking about karma there. Lagos government compensate bus train accident victims with jobs and scholarship. And to the last story there, Internet FGOK 24.2 billion for 20 airports, 43 schools, and 6 markets.
Next, we'll take a look at the First News newspaper, and the major story reads: DSS unmasks misguided politicians behind interim government plot. Says masterminds planning to obtain frivolous court injunctions to stop Tinubu's inauguration. They plan to sponsor unrest that will warrant declaration of state of emergency. Still on the front page of the newspaper, my wife's children won't be part of governance. That's according to the governor-elect of Kano State. And U.S. hikes student tourist visa fees by 15%. Assault, report yourself within 7 days, police tell Portable. It is another story on the front page of First News. Well, moving towards the top of the front page there, Tinubu will turn Nigeria around. That is according to APC governors. INEC presents certificates of return to governors-elect, and I was pressurized to manipulate Abia Gabriel results. That is according to the returning officer. Finally, on the front page of the First News, I won't disappoint Nigerians, Tinubu pledges.
And moving on to News Direct, we would quickly pick those stories that have not been highlighted by other papers earlier reviewed. FIRC set to protect rights of passengers against negligence, recklessness by commercial drivers. Sustained growth, Transcorp PLC delivers strong performance as revenue rises by 21%. And 2023 NLNG Science Quiz Competition focuses on net zero. I think net zero emission there. So it's trying to say, Makinde Deputy or your Assembly members elect receive certificate of return. And finally, Sanwo-Olu Abiodun, political religious leader, facilitate whole special prayers as Tinubu turns 71. That's the major story. Those are the major stories on the front page of the Nigerian News Direct.
All right, now we'll take a look at the Business Day. The major story reads: moribund mills, paper imports gulp 1.63 trillion naira in 5 years. And other stories on the front page of the Business Day: frequent tanker explosions rouse regulator into toughening safety rules. Naira Crunch, how banks can regain trust. And Nigeria lags as peers enjoy Shell's bumper payout. Now, these are the major stories on the front page of the Business Day newspaper this morning.
And those are the papers we have for you at this time on the morning show. We now have the privilege of having in our midst, as always, the editor-in-chief Deadline newspaper, Marlon Nasrullah. It's a pleasure to have you join us this morning.
Good morning. It's good to be here.
As the newsrooms were battling to round off production yesterday, we were inundated with what appears to be, I'm not sure if it's, how would I call it? Well, what appears to be a warning to all of us, media houses, CSOs, and even the judiciary about how real the plot is to stop the handing over. This has been a rhetoric that has been on, especially from the ruling party, about efforts to thwart this democracy, about how some people are not willing to go, about all kinds of narratives. Some spokesperson of the ruling party had sort of become prophets in some sort, with this new revelation by the DSS. What do you make of that revelation by the DSS yesterday?
Well, I expected them to have gone a step further by arresting the people that they have identified, because that's what they said in the statement, that they have identified, certain individuals. And because they didn't do that, you can see some people are already trying to, mention some names, like one of the spokespersons of the ruling APC, that's the former aviation minister, Fani Kayode. He mentioned quite a number of names, most of them members of the opposition candidates and what have you. So I think the DSS should have gone, a step further by mentioning, the names of those who are part of the plot. Or in the alternative, we should see them having their day in court. If really you have succeeded in, identifying them, then what stops you from going forward with either prosecution, what the law allows? That's what you should do, because the DSS, has a responsibility mostly around national security and things that have to do with domestic threats and what have you. But the way they have been going about it, they have opened themselves to all sorts of accusations. Some are saying they're already trying to see how they will help the president-elect, to secure his mandate and what have you, which is allowed by the law, because now that he has been elected, he is already a state property. So I don't think that's a valid argument to say, but I think, like I mentioned earlier, they should go a step further by telling us who these individuals are, so that at least we will know what to do with them, because this is something that is reasonable, and the law is clear as to what to do with cases like this.
So without actually naming these individuals that you've identified, what exactly is the point of saying that you've identified these people and that's that? So what do we do with that information?
Maybe they are trying to preempt, some of the people, because as you know, so many people are already in court. Some will be going to court. Some are already staging protests. Some are likely to do the same. But now that they have said, there will be frivolous court cases, there will be all sorts of protests and what have you. So all those that are willing to participate in things like this, probably they might have been preempted by what the DSS.
So the question really is, as we've always said, even the ruling party had always used the word, if you're unhappy with what has happened, go to court. Whether frivolous or germane, isn't that a case to be left to the judiciary to determine on its honor, rather than make it look like, because on the surface it appears like your argument is not valid, don't waste the time. It's their money, it's their time. Don't even bother going, because it sort of messes up the atmosphere. Is that not chewing too far?
I think that's what you said is very true, because that's why we have the courts. For those who feel aggrieved, those who think they have been cheated in a way, they can go to the court and try to see what they can get out of it. And then as far protest, the law allows it. Maybe it's for the security agencies to be able to provide the necessary security so that the protest can be done peacefully, without being hijacked by all sorts of questionable characters. But nobody should stop anyone, from trying to test the law, by going to the court. It's allowed, it's constitutional, so why should you maybe, because somebody is trying to go to court, start saying this is the end, this is the idea, this is what he's aiming at. It's for the law, it's for the courts to actually decide. If the cases are frivolous, as so many are saying, then the courts will do the needful. You don't have to tell them what to do.
All right. One thing with the Nigerians generally is I think we like ceremonies. We like making noise about a lot of things, whether they deserve to or not. Certificates of return were issued to governors-elect, House of Assembly members-elect, and all that. And we've seen how most of them were welcomed with so much pomp and pageantry. And even some governors taking advantage and going to present their certificates to the president himself, making a big ceremony out of the whole situation. Is all this necessary?
I don't think it's necessary because if you look at the task ahead of them, honestly, it doesn't call for celebration, at least not at this level. The one that you are talking about, presenting his certificate to actually they said they were at the president office to thank the president for the oil exploration activity that took place, but proximity, and you use maybe try to kill two birds with one stone. So maybe he tried to use that, and because there are so many people still challenging his victory, despite the fact that he has been issued with a certificate of return. The last time I checked, there are still
series of protests.
Series of protests. So maybe this is a way of trying to show the people that look, you are just wasting your time. I have already moved on. Even the president has congratulated, things like that. But honestly, I don't think our governors-elect, should be celebrating, mere collection of certificate of return. Like I said, if you look at the task ahead of them, honestly, they should just try to hit the ground running. By now, those of them that are, will be taking office for the first time, I believe they should by now, marshal out a plan, the way they are going to go about it. As for those who are already in office who have gotten maybe a second term, at least they know the issues and they know the things that they need to concentrate on. So coming out to be celebrating, carrying all sorts of advertisements, that's not what Nigerians are after. You have made so many promises and the people will still remember. Whether you forget them or not, the people will not forget. So it's for you to find out and try to see how you can go about fulfilling all the promises that you have made, not just coming out to be celebrated.
Interesting. Talking about celebration, I was looking at some jokes yesterday online where he was holding the certificate with the president, and somebody said he feels like a child who had gone out and done very well in the examination and has come home to present his certificate. Well, people have the right to express divergent perspective. But still staying with this issue, you have raised an issue that is very germane, and if we have to escalate that even to the president-elect, are you comfortable with the kind of law that seems to pervade the nation, as it were? It appears people who had won election has basically just retired into some resting point. In other climes, these are times where conversation becomes very strong and thick around the personalities that we are expecting will be part of government, what they are bringing in, and how that can impact the direction of governance. And for some, where the people feel there are questionable characters about them, it comes up for very stiff debate. Why are we staying away from all of this and waiting for swearing in before we begin this kind of conversation?
Well, some will say, if you look at the campaign, schedules, all the visitations, the traveling and what have you, maybe they need some rest. But honestly, I don't think they should have known, you requested for this. And honestly, it's not something that you will just go into hiding. This is the time for you, like I said earlier, to hit the ground running, by starting with all the things that you are planning to do. Because this is the time to start. Because if you fail to start at this particular time, then only God knows what will happen. Because if you see what the National Assembly did, for instance, one of the recent bills that the President actually assented to had to do with the number of months that elected officials can go without having their cabinets in place. So how do you form the cabinet? I don't think you should start doing that by May 29th. This is the time for you to start doing that, so that when it comes to vetting, when it comes to all the necessary things, you wouldn't have problems with them because you have started, early. But if you allow, maybe thinking that you need to rest before May 29, then honestly, by the time that that will happen, it may appear late or even worse than that.
All right, well, let's move away slightly from that and talk about, we're still getting fallout from the recently concluded elections, governorship in fact, and one of the major stories making rounds in the newspapers today is when the resident electoral commissioner for Abia State coming out to make some declarations that there was an attempt to induce her with some monetary gains so that she could be able to change the results of that election. If we're to take that on face value, is it something that we should really applaud at this kind of in this particular situation? I mean, like at this level of our democracy, is it something that we should applaud, or is it something that we should come to expect?
Well, Nigerians actually have been expecting that because our politicians, most of them are actually desperate. They can actually do worse than this, and maybe what the returning officer should have said, is the level to which that has affected the outcome of the result. If, for instance, they succeeded in getting her to do the wrong thing, then she should say it so that because the law allows the electoral body, 7 days to review the outcomes of elections. So just to come out, and say, this is what happened. Of course, so many Nigerians will expect that. I personally, know that politicians can go even beyond this. People that are willing to kill, people that are willing to do all sorts of things. Trying to induce electoral official, I think, is the least of the things that they can do. But like I said, if for any reason that has succeeded in affecting the outcome of the result, then we should know so that at least the law will now be allowed to take its course.
Moving on to other stories. This day, Business Day this morning is reporting that moribund mills, paper imports gulf 1.63 trillion in 5 years. We are a country that consumes so much volume of paper. We've been on this conversation forever around how much these paper mills. I mean, if you look at just your own households and your kids in school and how much textbooks they need every time or perhaps every year, it tells you the volume of papers that we really consume, not to talk of the newspapers on a daily basis, examinations and all whatnot. Why is it nearly impossible for us to bring back the paper mill, where we have all the raw materials to actually make these paper mills viable in Nigeria?
Well, let me start by saying that I don't think we are making the most of technology. Some of the physical papers you see around, honestly, they are not necessary. We no longer need them, but at least to an extent, we still need these papers for so many reasons. And we should go beyond talking about the fact that we have potentials. These are things that we can do, and we are spending precious, amount of money.
Foreign exchange for that.
Foreign exchange, something that we can actually make use here at home. We are taking it to help people improve on their own economy when our own is actually suffering. So honestly, the government should see this as a challenge, to see what they can do, even if it means allowing the private, individuals to come into this sector, so that at least we will be able to meet up the demands that we have at home. If we are not able to do that, at least we can have it, or to an extent reduce the amount of money that we keep spending. If you look at the newspapers, for instance, some of them are actually surviving by the grace of God, because you need dollars to import the newsprint, and the government is not helping in any way, despite the fact that the newspapers are playing a very critical role, whether it's in the area of development, in peace, in so many other cases. So the government should see this as a challenge, and see what they can do to revive all the paper mills that we have in the country.
If not for local consumption, at least we can export. We can export and get some dollars
get money.
All right, so let's still talking about money to be spent and money to be saved. One thing that we've come to try to realize, come and live with the reality, is that the subsidy will be removed, according to the present administration and the incoming one as well. They said that that's going to go. And now we're getting information from Pangason that petrol could sell for as high as 400 naira per litre. Should we brace ourselves for that?
Yeah, I think we should do that, because it's clear. The outgoing administration, has already set a timeline for the total withdrawal of subsidy from petroleum products. And then the incoming administration has also made it very clear that they are not going to continue with it, because from the argument that they are making, the people that are benefiting from it are not the common people. Mostly the businessmen, the marketers, the major players in the industry are the ones that are making all the money. And mostly they will sell petrol, above the price allowed by the government, and then still go back to the same government to collect money. What I will expect, both the outgoing and incoming administration to focus on is on the issue of palliatives. If there are so many people that I know that are willing to even keep their vehicles at home if the transport system can be efficient and running. But as it is now, so many people have to own vehicles because of the challenges. For instance, if you are the type that works late, by the time you close from work, you may not even see a commercial vehicle to patronize. And sometimes when you are able to do that, you may end up in the wrong cab, and before you know it, you are robbed, you lost so many things. So because of that, if we are able to talk about the issue of palliatives, the things that the people will now benefit, whether it's in the form of efficient transport system, whether it's in the form of things that will help the common man. I think nobody will challenge the government when it comes to removing the subsidy. Like you can see, even the Pangason, so many people actually expected these unions to be at the forefront, like opposing the removal of the subsidy. But you can see they are also in support of it, because all the arguments we have been making, we've not been able to see that they are, like something that we can take to the bank. So right now, let's talk about the palliative, since the issue of subsidy is like a done deal. As far as for the petrol selling at 400 naira already, so many of us are buying it, around that or even higher. So it's not something that the people have not even started on their own. So let them talk about the palliatives and then go ahead to remove the subsidy.
Right. Before we let you go, I mean, I think it's only in Nigeria that we have not recognized that transport is big business. In other countries, it's a major business. Matter of fact, you even have all kinds of incentives, buying monthly tickets so that it saves you some money.
Yeah.
Some even buy as high as an annual ticket, a 1-year ticket. You can jump on the bus 100 times in one day. In fact, for me, one of those trips, I needed to file a report. The internet was so good. I jumped on the public transport because there were free Wi-Fi on board. And once I was done with my report, I jumped out somewhere else. But I hope we get to that point someday. Now that we are talking of free internet at airports and markets and universities, we probably need them free at parks too. But finally, before you go, it's one conversation that has been generating varied reactions online, whether serious or perceived. Yesterday, Abba Gida Gida was saying that his wife will not be part of governance, and that is the debate in Kano, whereas in Bedouin, they are worried about a reverend father who has no wives. What's your take on this whole conversation around the office of the First Lady at a time that we are looking to save money from the cost of governance?
Well, if you look at it constitutionally, there is no rule for family members of elected officials. And like what the governor-elect in Kano said, I think it's very important if actually he can see to it that, that happens in the end. Because I remember when President Buhari came into office, he made that famous statement that, she belongs to the kitchen and what have you, that there will be no office of the First Lady. But right now we have office of the First Lady, with all the
privileges,
aids and privileges that you can think of. So, like you said, in the case of Benue, they don't even have that. But that does not mean, he cannot delegate a responsibility to any of the women in Benue, whether they are elected members or part of the party membership or what have you. The most important thing is to make sure that if these people end up in governance, they are not doing it just to the disadvantage of the family alone, that the people are the ones to benefit. If we can make that clear, then nothing should stop you from allowing maybe your wife to play a role, in helping you to discharge your mandates and keep the promises that you made to Nigerians.
Interesting perspective there from Nasir Lawal, especially in the face of what we saw from Katsina, where two wives rushed to the social media, and in their handle they had already adjusted into the office of the wife of the governor-elect, and two of them giving themselves two different titles linked to the same position, more like another race for who becomes the official First Lady. Like he said, we hope the conversation moves to what benefits the people rather than those in power. This is the much we can bring to you on Newspaper Review this morning. Thank you very much again for finding time to be here.
Thank you.
Just to remind you that you still owe me my iftar. I don't know when that will be before. And Ibrahim as well. So I'm drawing my rosters so that I can start substituting that from my own daily feeding plans. But once again, thank you very much.
That means you will have to come to Kaduna.
All right, we'll find a way to do that. We would now take a short break. See you at the top of the hour where we bring you more from Daybreak. Please stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that they look at the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
That's great. That's good to see you.
Hello, good morning and welcome. If you're just joining us, it's Daybreak on Trust TV, and if you've been with us all this while, then welcome back. I am Ibrahim Yusuf.
It's a pleasure to have you. Stay with us on the hour. I am Sunday Michael Ogu.
All right, so with the hour 8 o'clock, let's take a look at our headlines at the moment. I was pressurized, some politicians plotting to halt Tinubu's inauguration, that's according to the DSS.
I was pressurized to manipulate Apia Guba results, INEC returning officer.
And U.S. increases fee for non-immigrant visa application.
And now the news in detail. The United States has announced an increase in certain non-immigrant visa application processing fees. The increases published in the Federal Register on March 28th will be effective on May 30th, 2023. It said the non-immigrant visa fees are set based on the actual cost of providing non-immigrant visa services and are determined after conducting a study of the cost of such services, adding that an activity-based costing methodology was used to calculate annually the cost of providing consular services, including visa services. The fees for most non-petition-based non-immigrant visas were last updated in 2012, and certain other non-immigrant visa fees were last updated in 2014. The U.S. said other consular fees are not affected by this rule, including the waiver of the 2-year residency required fee for certain exchange visitors.
And Professor Nina Oti, returning officer for the Abia State governorship election, has confessed that she was offered a bribe to manipulate the election. Exactly a week ago, Alex Oti of the Labour Party was declared winner of the governorship poll. Speaking while being welcomed by the staff and students of the Federal University of Technology, Owerri, Oti, who is the Vice Chancellor, said before the final declaration of the result, she was promised a huge monetary inducement to change the will of Abia people. She stated that she stood on her ideals and principles not to shortchange anyone and ensured that the will of the people of Abia prevailed and that their votes counted during the election. INEC had suspended a coalition of the election results after thugs overran one of its offices in Abia. The returning officer and some key electoral officials were summoned to Abuja over the controversy. Abia is the only state where the Labour Party won in the governorship election.
And now to security matters, the Department of State Services said some key political players are plotting to foist an interim government in Nigeria. In a statement on Wednesday, Dr. Peter Afunanya, DSS spokesman, stated that some persons have weighed various options, which include foisting interim government after obtaining frivolous court injunctions to forestall the inauguration of new executive administration and legislative houses at the federal and state level. Afunanya said such persons were also considering sponsoring endless violence mass protests in major cities to warrant a declaration of state of emergency. The DSS said it supports a hitch-free handover. The DSS said it supports a hitch-free handover, vowing to work assiduously in this direction. President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu is due for inauguration on May 29.
All right, that's it for the headlines. Now it's time for us to take some news reports. President Muhammadu Buhari has sworn in Solomon Arase as the new chairman of the Police Service Commission. The swearing in of the former Inspector General of Police preceded the meeting of the Federal Executive Council on Wednesday. And it comes 2 months after the Senate confirmed him as chairperson of the PSC. Kende Amodu reports.
President Buhari had forwarded Arase's name to the Senate for confirmation in line with sections 153 subsection 1 and 154 subsection 1 of the 1999 Constitution as amended. It is not surprising that the former police chief got the nod of the Senate. Arase, 65, who retired in 2016, was the 18th indigenous Inspector General of Police from April 2015 to June 2016. He has an uphill task ahead of him, but the first big assignment is to smoothen relations between the Commission and the police top hierarchy.
If you look at the caliber of people you have in the Commission, then you also look at the professional skills of the police management team. There is no way that there will be no occasionally these issues, but what I think we should do. Each of the parties should not learn to take everything. There must be negotiation, there must be empathy, there must be respect, for each of our spaces. I will expect that the Commission will allow the Inspector General of Police to exercise his operational control over the Nigerian Police Force, and that the IG himself will respect, the constitutional powers, of the police force.
The former IGP is also looking at tackling corruption in the police force from the source.
As an Inspector General of Police, the way I looked at issue of corruption was to identify it from the source. When you tackle issues that are likely to affect, the tendencies to be corrupt, you deal with the issues. Welfare. How are you taking care of their welfare? How are you ensuring that when they retire, they have a decent house to go to? How do you take care of their children? Can we organize scholarship scheme for their children? Can we ensure that when we deploy them, they have, the necessary equipments, to work with? There must be empathy.
There's also the niggling problem of indiscipline, which has not only affected the image of the police, but its relationship with society.
I would not want a situation where civil transactions are criminalized. So any officer who, steps out of the line, there are going to be consequences. But at the same time, they are my colleagues and children. So I'm going to make sure that I sharpen their skills. I make them to start having self-confidence in themselves. With more training, the trust gap between members of the public and the police, will be breached.
The new chairman of the Police Service Commission must take a leaf from his predecessors if he is to successfully maneuver through the many pitfalls of his new office. From State House, Abuja, Kehinde Amodu, Trust TV News.
Moving on, the Nigerian Meteorological Agency has predicted the possibility of a thermal discomfort across some cities in the country during the holy month of Ramadan. NIMET listed Gombe among states at risk of experiencing high thermal discomfort. Despite the hot weather condition, commercial motorcycle riders who are fasting in the holy months spend hours operating across the city to put food on the table. Ibrahim Ismail brings us this report.
This is a typical workday for commercial riders at the popular New Mile 3 joint, Gombe Metropolis. Temperatures here is 37 centigrade. These Okada operators defy the scorching sun to navigate the city and get money to feed their families during iftar and sahur this Ramadan. I have a wife and a son. I can't be idle. I must struggle. I work the whole hours of the day up to 2 a.m. For me, the heat is not too much. It is normal.
To
be honest, the heat has reduced these days. It has been cloudy and there is little breeze. Meanwhile, some of the Okada riders are strategic in their operations during the fasting period, taking few hours break to have some relief from the scorching sun. We resume 6 a.m. in the morning, take a break by 12 noon, and resume after Zuhr prayers. While others resume after 4 p.m. and close during iftar. While Okada riders struggle in the harsh weather, tricycle operators say they feel a little better in the tricycle shed. Our work condition is better than that of those operating a motorcycle because the tricycle has a shed. For Nigerians who are fasting in the holy month to mitigate the impact of this harsh weather condition, medical experts and Nigeria Meteorological Agency advise people to drink a lot of water after breaking of the fast. Ibrahim Ismail, Trust TV News, Gombe.
Now, the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, has arrested a housewife, Arabi Musa, and her husband to her younger sister in possession of 4 kilograms of cannabis sativa in Katsina. The commandant of the agency in the state, Muhammad Bashir, said this while briefing journalists on their statewide anti-drug war within the last 3 months. Abdullahi Ahmadi has more.
God knows I was conscripted into this issue because when they brought the cannabis sativa, I resisted, but later I joined them in selling it to get commission out of the proceed. Now I realize my mistakes and I promise never to indulge in anything like this again.
Worried about women involvement in drugs-related offenses, the NDLEA boss in Katsina advised parents to carefully scrutinize anyone seeking the hands of their daughters in marriages.
As we speak now, both Rabi Musa and Suleiman are facing prosecution. The case has already been filed to charge to court. Apparently, they will be arraigned any moment from now. Our take here is parents should be aware of the kind of husbands or in-laws, prospective in-laws that they give their daughters to.
The command has also arrested 3 suspects in connection with a stolen vehicle intercepted in Katsina Metropolis.
Further investigation actually reveals some documents we found inside the vehicle revealed actually the owner of the vehicle. So we actually tried to get in touch with them, and we found that the case has already been reported to the police in Jos, and they're actually working on it. So we are running out our own preliminary investigation now. By end of today, probably tomorrow, we'll be able to, with the case file and our investigation, be able to hand over to the police.
The suspects, identified as Nasiru Shehu, Awal Abdullahi and Felix Ajayi, confessed to have stolen the vehicle from Jos in Plateau State, heading to the neighboring Niger Republic. Both of us here are mechanic, panel beater, and an electrician. We conspired to steal this vehicle only to get what to eat, in addition to devil's influence. This is the first and the last time, I promise. The command had intercepted another stolen vehicle along Katsina Molumfashi Road 2 months ago and found some ammunition in the process. While the suspects were handed over to the police for further investigation and prosecution, NDLEA urges parents to take full responsibility of their children to avoid falling victims of drug dealers. Abdullahi Ismail, Trust Television News, Katsina.
Welcome back. We now have joining us in the studio Ali M. Ali, who is a journalist and the Deputy Media Director of the APC, the Presidential Campaign Council. I don't want to tell you what conversation went down behind the camera, but it's a pleasure to have you join us in the studio.
Well, it's good to be here, Michael, and it's good to hear you here also. It's been quite a while.
The Ramadan seemed to be bringing out the shines in you.
What is that? I don't feel the shine.
It turns out in the studio.
Those can be deceptive, you know.
But at least you're not part of those we have seen in pictures sleeping around the masjid in a way to buy time ahead of Iftar. He joins us in the studio to discuss his thoughts on the revelation by the DSS of purported plan. Well, in this case, they said they have confirmed of an attempt to try to the transfer of power come May 29. When some of us saw these reports, the first thing that came to mind was one of the cardinal function of the DSS is to discover things like this, of course, but to also nip it in the bud. Is it enough to just to come out in the way they did, more like an alarmist group, rather than point at the individuals they think were directly responsible, because the memo said they have identified them? What's your thought with regards to how that messaging was couched?
Well, I think they're just being circumspect here, because it will be good to see the DSS naming and also shaming these identify anti-democratic forces. It will be a good thing if they are named and they are shamed in the process. But you see that the Nigerian political environment is always charged. It's always charged, whether before election or after election. And in the 2023 election is particularly charged, and rightly so, because of the role, I must say, the media, even the mainstream, a section of the mainstream media, and of course the free-for-all social media. The social media, rightly or wrongly, prime some people to think that certain people were going to win the election. And post the declaration of the president-elect, some people are still living in this illusion. They still have this illusion that somewhere, somehow, some people have rigged certain people out of power. I'll give you an example, which I think is a grand delusion on the part of especially the vice presidential candidate of the Labour Party, who has been on air, and a section of the interview he had went viral. You've seen it, it's everywhere now, it's so commonplace now. That he defended the votes they secured in the presidential contest, but dismissed the ones that actually flawed them in the election. Now, and you could see from his diatribe, because clearly that was a diatribe. It was so, the vituperation he expressed, you could see that there are symptoms of delusion there. Because in one breath, you're saying the votes that returned the president-elect were invalid, but in the same breath, you are saying the votes that the Labour Party got can be defended. And that has charged some element. And we've said it in the past that some people are prime for a possible heartbreak. Because before the election, a number of polls conducted by very partisan groups have placed the Labour candidate well ahead of others. But we always say the test of the pudding is in the eating. And when the people tested the pudding, and some, it was not palatable for them. They are yet to come to terms with this loss. But you see, the DSS, coming back to the original question, I think they have just been circumspect because the international community, if you look at even the international media, because of they've been following rightly or wrongly, they zero in on the Nigerian election. The election has been adjudged depending on which side of the divide. Some, if you are the optimist, you say the glass is half full, like me. I belong to the tribe of optimists. No election, people say, and I concur that is perfect. No election. Even the almighty United States, who has been the country that has been at it for over 200 years, we've seen what had happened. Not once, not twice. In the UK, every now and again, you see a new government is formed. The UK has this unviable record of having 3 or 4 prime ministers in the space of 6 months or thereabout.
That's right.
You understand? But nobody is biting an eyelid. But coming back home, yes, the DSS here, I think they've done a professional thing. In the past, more often than not, as a reporter myself, I've had cause to worry when DSS routinely raises alarm that there are plans to either rock the boat, there are certain elements, but you see that this latest submission by the DSS is not unfounded. Why? 2 days ago, some element went to the defense headquarters. It's in the public domain. At least you've seen the video going around, and you know the video is fresh, calling on the military to intervene. What manner of Democrats are this? So you say the latest warning by the DSS is not on flawed premise. They have sufficient ground to think and to suspect, or to even confirm, according to them. They know the places of meetings, they know the individuals, and I think the next step should be to name them with proof that, look, these are anti-democratic forces intent on truncating a process that has been completed. What remains now is the inauguration of the president-elect.
Okay, without infringing on your thoughts there, are you not worried about those who also express concern that the messaging appears to be doing the bidding of the APC spokesperson who had hitherto suggested that this were going to happen? They, in a way, argue that if people are protesting the outcome of election, that it is within their right, and some have even approached the court that where the court deems what their prayers to be frivolous, it is within the space of the court to declare it so, rather than sort of suggest that people are pursuing frivolous motives.
See, what we're saying is that, look, protests are part and parcel of any democratic process. Individuals, every day to this moment, if you go to the White House, there are people who are protesting one issue or the other, which is perfectly legitimate. But what we oppose is the idea of people in the name of protest. First, look at it, how it metamorphosed from mere protest to express displeasure, which we welcome. At a point, 2 supporters of the presidential mandate, that's Bola Aswaji's presidential mandate given freely by Nigerians, nearly 9 million of them, also were on the street to express solidarity and support. So it's okay, it's part and parcel of the democratic process for people to have contrary opinion, to also express those opinions in strong terms as in peaceful demonstration or protest. It's the culture globally. But what we oppose is when you move from that worldwide acceptable globally accepted, to calling for first the truncation of a process that started and 90% completed, with Nigerians expressing their opinion emphatically. What I mean, expressing their opinion, they voted for a candidate who a clear winner. His closest challenger, in the outcome of the result, it's 2 million votes short, nearly 2 million votes short. Both the number 2 and number 3 in the electoral presidential duel came 2 million votes short. Now, to also insist that as Democrat, we welcome the idea of litigation. The outgoing president is one clear example of tenacity and perseverance. For 3 consecutive times, he ran election, he had a greater following than especially the Labour Party. Buhari didn't, as opposed to obedience, they were more fanatical, more committed, with zero resources. For 12 years, Buhari was in the wilderness, seeking national mandate to lead the country. And he came short, and he went to court 3 times, litigation, and the verdict was not in favor. The 4th attempt, he was lucky, because how did he make that stroke? How did he strike gold? By extending a hand of friendship across the Niger. If you remember, for the 3 consecutive times, Buhari was monstrously popular in his part of the country. I see a similarity between Buhari Dins, and which I was a proud member of the Buhari movement at a point. You understand? And obedient. It's a good start. I always say it's a good start. When Buhari went into presidential duel in 2003, his party then had 9 governors. 9 governors. AMPP or APP at the time. In 2003, it was APP, then metamorphosed to ANPP. Had 9 governors. And by the time they went into that duel in 2003, 9 dropped to 7. Labour Party has 0 governors. And I think 1 or 2 legislators. And look at it today. 0, because the right messaging for the people who are supportive of Labour Party. You see, they're able to make some electoral upsets. Nobody even thought, rightly, beyond the social media razzmatazz. We never thought, some of us never really gave Labour Party any chance of recording 8 senators, 1 governor. This is quite remarkable. The same way some people were dismissive of the NNPP. But NNPP, look at it, it made a major dramatic upset in a place like Kano.
All right, and let's go back. By coming back to the DSS memo and that. So, to get this thing clear now, they have come out to say, we know about this plot, and we know who are orchestrating this plot, and they left it at that. What do we do with this information now?
We as ordinary citizens?
Exactly, because if the DSS did not name these people and they're not taking any further steps in any other direction apart from saying that we know, then what do we do with this information?
Well, I think first, all of us who are lovers of democracy, we should be very vigilant. And more importantly, those who are likely to truncate the process, they are the armed forces. And the armed forces, and I think they have made this warning in the past, that look, citizens should not involve them in politics. They too should be, I think there's a time to up the ante, especially in forum like this, the media, because those who are calling for anti-democratic sentiments, who are expressing those, they are largely unaware of our history, how some of us in the newsrooms actually worked for the emergence of an enduring democracy. The elements who went to defense headquarters. Of course, there will be bad losers, sore losers. It's understandable. But I just gave the example of Buhari. 3 times. He never called, he never asked his supporters. Himself, a former military lawyer, who more than anybody else knows the nature of military rule, how freedoms are curtailed, freedoms for so many other things, beyond even expression. Now, it's ultimately those in the vanguard of democracy are ordinary Nigerians, not people in government, not, and it's the tax now, especially for all lovers of democracy. I'm not saying contestants now. Those who contest, normally depending on their outcome, until Buhari become truly a Democrat. For the 3 consecutive times he has contested, he was going through a baptisma to, if you like, let me use the term, to be debriefed of whatever military tendency. Obasanjo never went through that baptisma. Straight from prison, a couple of weeks later, became president. And you could see that under Obasanjo, it was routine for governors to be impeached, Senate president to be impeached, without going through the full legal process. We've seen that would happen with Bayelsa State governor, who was impeached and then sent packing. In Plateau, Darie. In fact, Darie was impeached in one someone derisively described the place he was as a corner shop, and then the maze, and then even the required number of legislators to do that
wasn't
met. So, but because he was not debriefed, but look at Buhari now, because of the years, and then he realized the importance of communication, of consulting. Some people say, the Buhari we know now, those who witnessed his military regime, and the Buhari who is here now as a Democrat are totally different people, because now he's more liberal. People have called him names. There are people who even say he's a clone version of the original Buhari. And until recently, he never made public. He pretended not to even be aware of that. But until recently, we never knew. People thought, yeah, this man is obviously different from the original Buhari. But to show you the extent of a Democrat he has been, tolerant. But suddenly we have people who want us to entrust them to surrender our sovereignty. They can't take a loss. They are challenging in the courts. They're going if you like, they're going off road, so to say. Let me use that expression to truncate the process. That they say they are Democrats now. They believe in the rule of law. They believe in the courts. They believe in litigation. But suddenly going through the back door, you have someone who would have been number 2 citizen speaking like, if you like, someone on the streets.
To take you a bit further on some of the innuendos that seem to be coming out from your comments, we have seen political parties and the major contenders coming out to say we are not a party to this. At one point, I think the Labour Party president was even advising his supporters not to show up at the Supreme Court. People have been engaged to pursue the legal case, so showing up and demonstrating doesn't exactly add to that process. We have also seen reactions from other parties like the SDP, and they're saying they believe in the democratic process, they are not in support of anything. Do you think the said people that the DSS is referring to have the blessings of some of the people who participated in the presidential election, or it's just a set of disgruntled elements, like you rightly said, who cannot take a loss, that are mobilizing themselves to act without the blessings of this person?
You see, yes, the presidential candidate of the LP has distanced himself in a way to any process that would truncate democracy or that would truncate the transition. But he's clearly at discord with his number 2. And the number 2 couldn't have, it's just like what we have now, the good cop and the bad cop. We have the good politician and the bad politician now. Whatever the DSS, whether shadowy, whether real or imagined enemies of democracy, the DSS raise alarm, then you say, like I said from the onset, the utterances, which are quite regrettable, by the number 2 in the Labour Party, the vice presidential candidate, whatever reservations we have, when you listen to him, and then look at the what he's been saying, then you say, yeah, these suspicions, this revelation by the DSS is on solid ground. And of course, the smaller parties, I must say, give it to them also, because they're Democrats. They've distanced themselves from that, because it's only, no matter what, let me quote Awolowo here. He said, look, the worst, the most malevolent democracy is better than the most benevolent dictatorship. The worst form of democracy is better than the best form of
dictatorship.
Especially in Africa. But we've seen it somewhere, some people will argue otherwise. Because somewhere in Asia, I'm going around, the reporter and me will say, in Asia, Asian democracies, Asian economy was developed by dictatorship. But then you can juxtapose that what happened in some parts of Africa. Zaire, Uganda, did that bring the prosperity we thought? But like Bill Clinton once said, he said, look, it's only in democracy, when he came to visit Nigeria in 2000 or thereabout, he said, no matter how imperfect it is, it's only in democracy you have a fighting chance of righting the wrongs of whatever administration you've ever had. Under military rule, no. You rarely have that. You don't even engage. You can, whatever you say or you don't say will be seen as an affront on the regime.
Interesting.
Yes.
All right. Well, at this moment, I would like to welcome Bulamu Bukarti onto the program. He is a senior fellow in the geopolitics team of the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. Bulamu, good morning and welcome to Daybreak. All right, so we can't actually hear you. You've muted the sound on your system. Can you kindly unmute yourself?
Okay, while we try to get that sorted, we'll come back to you as quick as we can establish a clear line between you and our audience. You were saying something that quite resonated with me. The Hausas will summarize it as Arushe Kowa Erasa kind of politics. Where do you particularly situate this problem? Is it in our failure as a democracy to manage expectations around politicking? Are there institutions that are supposed to moderate conversations that seem to be docile, that sort of give people the impression that what happens in your small cocoon is a reflection of the entirety of the country? Where are we failing, to galvanize or manage expectations, as it were, when it comes to political or election messaging?
Unfortunately, you see institutions that should moderate our expectations, or even sometimes, exactly, organize. They're so intensely political too. Take for example, the pulpit. The pulpit, rather than have a moderating influence, because we are people of faith. Even the Constitution recognizes that Nigeria is a multi-ethnic, multi-religious entity. So, but you find out that even the clergy, the pulpit, the media, more often than not, tend to either to have a moderating or to influence expectation, to lower, tend to actually exacerbate it now, or to amplify it. We've seen instances where men from the pulpit prophesize and raise, and then the same vision. This has been part and parcel of Nigeria's political trajectory from the First Republic. So people expectations along the usual lines also, of course.
All right.
Yeah.
I would like you to hold your thought on that. We understand that we now have a clear line with Bukati. Good morning.
Morning. Thank you very much for having me.
Good. All right. You are Nigerian, of course, but you are sitting in a geolocation that makes you a temporary spectator, as it were. We all seem to be in the ring, and sometimes it's difficult to evaluate how those in the rings are doing. It takes somebody from a bit of distance from the ring to have a clear, to have a proper perspective of all dimensions of issues. What are the perspectives, from the diaspora with regards to how Nigeria has fared in the recent elections, February 25th and, of course, March 18th?
No, thank you very much again. Of course, the reaction of Nigerians in diaspora is a reflection of the reaction of Nigerians at home. For me, as someone who studies Nigeria very well with a focus on security, my first reaction, to be honest, was one of relief. It was a deep sigh because the elections came and went without any major or widespread security incident. Because before the elections, we feared that there could be widespread violence, whether from political thugs or from communal violence or from the three major armed groups that we have in the country. So far, so good. The election came and went without any major incident. Of course, there have been isolated incidents of violence in places like Kano, Lagos, and in gubernatorial elections in places like Bauchi. And we urge the security agencies to investigate those arrested, because over 700 people have been arrested for election-related offenses. We urge the security forces to investigate them and prosecute them swiftly, because what we have seen in the past are incidents of election violence in which no one gets arraigned before a court of law and punished. And therefore, that leads to a sense of impunity, because people will think actions do not have consequences. But if those who are guilty of election offenses in the isolated incidents that we saw get punished this time around, that will serve as deterrence to those after them. Now, with regards to the way our democracy has fared over the past 7 elections, in my opinion, to be honest, what we have seen is incremental progress in our democratic process. Any fair observer who has observed Nigeria's elections from 1999 to date will say that there have been progress after progress in different areas of our electoral process. And I think that's an achievement that we should all praise. Of course, we know that there were technical and logistical glitches in these elections, especially during the presidential elections. That has been admitted even by the president-elect. He admits that there were glitches. Whether those glitches and logistical challenges were enough to upturn the election is something for the courts to determine. But we also saw progress in the gubernatorial elections when we saw most of the logistical and technical challenges regarding the vivas, the IREV, and punctuality of election officials, all of them sorted in most polling units. Like I said, my reaction, and I believe the reaction of many Nigerians, those of us who are, objective observers, was one of relief. And I think Nigeria is demonstrating to African countries that democracy is in Africa to stay.
All right. With that overview of the general elections and whatnot, we're still having some blowback as to conduct of that election. And one of the major things that what we're actually talking about this morning is the DSS going out to say that they have identified a plot by some people to actually foist an interim government on the country because of one reason or the other. How worried should we be in this kind of situation?
Well, the idea of an interim government, to be honest, is a complete and utter nonsense. It is alien to our constitution. It is foreign to our laws. It has no basis whatsoever in any law in Nigeria. And it would have been laughable, that idea, if it was not coming from the DSS, that some Nigerians would sit down and start plotting to institute an interim unelected government. It's a ridiculous idea. I never thought anyone would take that kind of idea seriously, but we have to take it seriously now that it is coming from the DSS. And of course, the statement itself is going to add tension to our already tense political situation. And unfortunately, Nigerians would continue to get worried, about peaceful transition of power. Because what we saw in the election is just one lap of our democracy. Of course, we saw the campaign or electioneering process, and then we saw the real election, the announcement of results. Now some matters are in court, but you need to take it all through until inauguration. That's where we would say you have had peaceful transition of power. If you remember, the US election in 2020 was peaceful, but then the sitting president did not want to hand over power, and therefore there was threat to peaceful transition of power. Now, the same thing happens here. Section 1 of our constitution is very clear that no one can rule Nigeria or any part of Nigeria other than through the way or the means provided by the constitution. And the only means provided by the constitution and recognized by law is for one to get elected in a recognized election and to be duly sworn in by the stipulated authorities. And there is no person or authority in Nigeria that has been empowered by law to institute an interim government. In fact, the word interim government itself, the phrase interim government, is completely foreign to our legal system. It is not something I would have taken seriously, except that it is coming from the DSS. Perhaps
Bukati,
now that the DSS has released the statement, we would urge them to follow the matter to its logical conclusion, arrest those who are alleged to have to be planning this illegality, and to prosecute them before a court of law.
All right, Bukati, still staying with you, I would like your thoughts around post-election expectations management. Ali was just discussing that shortly before we came to you. What is the practice, in other climes? Let me not say Senate climes, because clearly what we have seen from advanced democracy shows clearly that the word sanity, it's a very thin line from madness. But what this election has also revealed is how fragmented this country does seem to look, that the fibers that hold us together are becoming fragile by the day, and therefore lays a different kind of expectation on the winner of the elections to begin to find ways to truly mend fences and get people to feel a part of this democratic space. So what will be your charge to the president-elect, for instance, in the face of what this election has revealed, beyond the numbers and the fact that he emerged a winner?
Look, Nigeria has always, been a victim of manipulation of different fault lines, whether it's religion, it's sectionalism or tribalism or other isms in the country. And if you listen to unscrupulous politicians, you would think Nigeria is so much divided. If you read the 3 myths about Nigeria written by Dr. Yusuf Bala Usman, we would understand, for those of us who have read that book, that Nigeria is much more, it's a country that is much more united in terms of its geography, its history, its religion, and other social events throughout history than the average unscrupulous politician would want us to believe. Unfortunately, we know that people do exploit religion, they exploit tribalism and others for their selfish political interest. I think in terms of expectation management, the first thing is for the president-elect and the vice president-elect to implement what they have promised after the election, which is something we have called for even before the winner was declared, which is the idea of an inclusive government, if you like, a government of national unity, a government that will bring together all the shades and colors of Nigeria. There are brilliant people, highly qualified people from all geopolitical zones, from all tribes, from all religions, and from all political parties. And I think the new administration should bring together the best brains from all of these areas, and including Nigerians that are not aligned to any political party or are not activists in any of the fault lines I have mentioned. When you have done that, in terms of bringing everyone together in the cabinet, in the government, then you will symbolically would have sent a message to Nigerians that this government is for all. But then you have to go further to also include every part of Nigeria in the government developmental agenda, so that every part of Nigeria will feel carried along in government projects and government activities. And I think it is also for the new administration to be very honest and transparent with Nigerians, to look Nigerians in the eye and tell them that, look, we do have so many challenges that we cannot solve in one day, and no one has the silver bullet or the magic wand, and therefore take Nigerians through the journey of building a great Nigeria and demonstrate that by their example.
Thank you.
All right, so let me come back to you now. We just talked about expectations, we talked about managing them, and we just heard Bulama talk about what is expected of the incoming administration. It's easy for us to sit down and talk about a government of national unity, let's bring everybody together and all that. With the diverse nature of our society, how possible is it to have a government that will truly reflect that?
Well, you see, the bottom line is the quality of leadership. You have to look at the man at the very top. What you see, you have to look at the pedigree of Asuwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. If you look at him, if you listen, his life trajectory, being what he is, then you will say perhaps finally in the leadership here, we find someone who truly will lead us to that El Dorado. Because given his track record, first as governor of Lagos State, and he's also a known fighter for democracy. We've seen his role, the role he played when he galvanized other Nigerians to actually midwife this democracy in diaspora, outside the shores of this country. So if you look at the nature, because the bottom line, I remember this insight by Chinua Achebe, that the problem of Nigeria is squarely that of leadership. So if you have the round peg, and you can see that from the risks Asuwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu took, he's prepared to break boundaries, to extend boundaries, to break the ceiling, to test, to treat the part hitherto scared to be treated upon by others. You've seen that. For example, the major risks he took, the Muslim ticket, which was no issue in the past. It has never been an issue. But because some people thought they could have a shortcut to power, they now amplified that division. Like he said, I remember very well, Yusuf Bala Usman, I think Bukarchi fleetingly mentioned that Nigeria's problem, really, people at the bottom of the social ladder, we've existed long before colonial intrusion. There have been some semblance of interaction between and among the various disparate regions of the Nigerian state. People have interacted. You can see that from the morphology and the lexicon, the grammar of various ethnic groups in Nigeria. You can see there's been this close trade and even political affinities between and among the various disparate, but because of politics, some people want to take a shortcut. Now, this is where Tinubu, you will say, is the real deal. And is a man who is prepared, and he has won beforehand. He is not the sort that will shy away. Look at the challenges, the hurdles he had to cross to get to where he is now, mobilizing all Nigerians. For example, we all know the unpopular currency swap, what it cost, and how a lot of people thought it was going to cost the APC the presidential slot. The energy crashes that happened before then, and in every of these challenges, he never shied away to express his opinion in full glare of public, as opposed to others. So with the right leadership, which I'm assuring you and assuring Nigerians, Asuwaju, with the right leadership, and he said it even in his acceptance speech, and not too long ago, that look, region faith will not determine his appointment. And we've seen that happen at a miniature level, at a micro level in Lagos. In Lagos, we all know when he was governor, he assembled a rainbow coalition, if you like that expression. He assembled Nigerians, depending on their competencies. I am not promoting or have not promoted Asuwaju because I am from a particular part of the country. He identified, look, if I must, we need people who can really do the work. And that's why I'm even in the studio here. So with the right leadership, all other things, and with discipline, but of course, that's quite a tough, because you also have to do some balancing act. All politicians worldwide, they do that balancing act. But then when you put round pegs, what do you call them now? What's the expression?
Round pegs and round holes.
Round holes. Then you're home and dry.
Interesting. As we drill down to the end of this conversation, you said something I was going to ask about, but you touched it fleetingly. We talked about managing expectation from Nigerians. We know that the campaign team was really very huge, and Nigerians can vow that everybody who went into that team went in principally for Asuwaju's sake. People were also looking at what intrinsic benefits they were going to get out of a win. How do we then begin to get to the point where people can just say, my job begins and ends with just ensuring that the party emerged victorious? Governor El-Rufai said something to him shortly after the emergence to say that he shouldn't be pressured to think that all those who are behind him singing Asuwaju for Nigeria must be compensated in when it comes to putting his cabinet together. And Bukati also alluded to picking people who are competent and reflective. What is your messaging to people like you who are taking up this task to be part of of this history, on how to manage expectations and allow him the free hand to choose the team he thinks would help him deliver?
I think, first, like people say all the time, I just made that allusion, round pegs and round holes. But you see, like I said, in a country like ours, you have to also balance certain political interests. Essentially, most times, people with certain competencies are also not politicians. And you need the people who can sway votes for you to have the executive authority to do the right thing. So it's a very tricky one. But I believe strongly that Asuwaju, given his ability, he said, he described himself that he's a talent hunter. And before he got here, he built his bridge long ago. He crossed it long before he got to that bridge. He prepared for this long time ago, decades ago. He prepared for that. And that's why one attempt, he struck gold, because he prepared. And you know how he prepared. In 2007, when he realized that the national mood does not favor a southerner, I mean, he made available his platform to Atiku Abubakar. 2011 too, he made his platform available to Nuhu Ribadu. So with that in mind, he is the sort that would sacrifice to competence, because he said he has a lot at stake, because he promised big. And he's going to deliver big.
All right.
Yes.
Quickly, Bukati, can we have you in 30 seconds give us your final thoughts on this conversation?
Sure. My brother Ali M. Ali did speak about the responsibilities of leadership. And when he mentioned Chinua Achebe's the trouble with Nigeria, it reminded me of Chinua Achebe's debate with Abubakar Gimba, who wrote the letter to the unborn child. In which he argued that the problem of Nigeria lies squarely with the followership, not the leadership. And for me, I think it is a bit of both. It is not either or. As Ali M. Ali said, leadership has a responsibility, but we as followers, we also have a responsibility. We were earlier talking about the DSS statement, and one of the ways the DSS mentioned some people wanted to disrupt our democracy is by instigating mass violent protests. If they were going to do that, they would use Nigerians. And therefore, my call to the followers is for us to be good followers as much as we need good leadership. And I think it is the duty and responsibility of every Nigerian to shun away from anything, to shun anything that will damage our democracy. If people are aggrieved, they are legitimately entitled to approach courts of law and to ask for courts intervention. But it is not right for people to instigate violence in order to disrupt an inauguration. Now, the final point is for our courts, because in the DSS statement, there is this allusion that some people, one of the other ways these people are trying to disrupt our democracy is by applying for or getting frivolous court injunctions. Of course, I wouldn't judge a court's injunction frivolous, and I don't think it is the duty of the DSS, within the power of the DSS to do that. It is for appellate courts to determine. But I would urge our courts to be very careful in issuing orders, especially ex parte orders. Ex parte orders are discretionary, but they are by law supposed to be issued judicially and judiciously. We have seen a few weeks ago how INEC was almost stopped from the gubernatorial election because of a court order, and therefore we should be careful about the orders we would give to not destroy our democracy.
Thank you very much, Bulama. I wish we had more time to allow you expound on those thoughts, but I'm sorry this is the much that time would allow us to take. It's been a pleasure talking to you and with you from the diaspora. We look forward to when you will round up whatever you are doing and come back to contribute effectively to governance and leadership in Nigeria. Thank you very much for your time.
No, thank you very much. I am also very much looking forward to coming home and giving our quota to taking our country forward. Thank you very much for your fantastic job.
And then in the studio, we want to thank Ali M. Ali, one of us who is on sabbaticals. We don't know how long that is going to be. We hope we come back soon to deepen this space. We have lost a lot of men to the other side. We hope that we are able to replenish in good time. Thank you again, Nigerians, for allowing us free access into your living room and for sparing us your time to be part of what has been a very enlightening conversation this morning on the studios of Trust TV. Let us do this again tomorrow. I am Sunday Michael Ogu.
Well, it's been a blast on Daybreak today. tomorrow is another one. I am Ibrahim Yusuf.